Well, when I was a little girl, I was into making films and I was into photography. You know, I loved the camera, holding the camera and being like looking at it through the lens. I mean, you see the world in a very different way when you look through a lens. And as a child, I got a hold of my dad's Super 8 camera and was like, oh, let's make a movie. You know, and you put it on the projector and you show it. And then I started showing them up in the neighborhood, and I charged 10 cents. And those were some of the most joyful days of my entire childhood. So, you know, I was in love with filmmaking as a little girl, then got away from it. I studied geology at F&M and I loved geology. I loved science, I loved astronomy. But in my senior year, I went to YBRA field camp for geology out west in Montana. There was this movie theater that ran vintage films, and I found that where I wanted to be every week was, you know, at the cinema. F&M didn't have film, they had theater. So at F&M, on my senior year, I did take acting and directing. People ask, well, geology, what's that have to do with filmmaking? And I think geology has everything to do with filmmaking. You're looking at a rock, and you're looking at this thing, and you're saying, what brought this to now? You know, you see it now. You see the formation, you see the minerals, you see this thing before you that you can study, and you need to look at what brought this to now. So you're excavating a story. A story. So that's really what you're doing in a film. I used to have equipment all along here. I used to have a lot of stuff that I was proud of that we'd purchased, and my lights and everything were over here. I was like, okay, it's not about that. I took all my equipment out of the studio because I redid my entire studio here into a story center. Directing an actor like that in a scene, in a very important scene, I mean, you're really thinking, what brought this to now? What brought that moment? And you better really understand it, and you better be able to justify it, or it's not going to be authentic. In the same way that if you're looking at a rock or a formation or a road cut and you're going to say what happened, the story better make sense. What brought that to that moment? You know, for me, when my parents passed away, I thought that my mother's death would be the most heartbreaking thing that I ever encountered. It was just the opposite. We were like best buddies, and I can tear up thinking about it, but I have tears of like inspiration. And that's really the moment where I felt that my artistic spark came alive. There's a certain maturity you have, you know, when your parents aren't here anymore, in a weird way. And so that's a lot about what that movie was. In the 1980s, it wasn't something that was obviously available, and it certainly wasn't obviously available to a young woman. And so you needed to chart your own course. It was really when I met Michelle. We went out and shot a short film. She always has taken the sonic end of, you know, the music, the sound. So from day one of my film career, we've partnered, you know, in the work. And that's been a joy. But it was like falling in love. I mean, that process of being behind a camera, I fell in love with my career right then. And it was funny, because I was seeking, and it was sort of like dating. I'll try radio, I'll try this, I'll try that, I'll try that. It's almost impossible to summarize, but it's like, in those moments, you feel like you're doing exactly what you were setting on this planet to do. You know, I'm not happy unless I have that large project on my plate, that large, you know, mountain to move in front of me. I mean, why live if you don't have a mountain to move, you know? I feel like, for me, it's just such an essential part of what I do, and I think the bigger the mountain, the more alive I feel in the doing of it.